Hi, this is Pat Moorhead, and we are back for a very not on schedule 6-5 podcast. We are glad that you've joined us, and you might be wondering, Pat, what is going on? Why are you doing this, you and Daniel, on a Wednesday afternoon? It's simple. One of us scheduled a flight when the pod normally goes. I won't say which one. We want to protect the innocent here, but we're just glad you're here. And Daniel, man, it is so good to see you. I've only seen you twice today, and I'm seeing you again, and I'm going to see you again in an hour, and then we're going to do happy hour together. It is a Dan and Pat type of day.
Yeah, it's funny because there's a his, hers, and ours, right? Because you've got Moor Insights, I've got Futurum Research and the Futurum Group, and of course we have the 6-5. But it sure as heck, if anybody watched us at MWC, it would be more like it's hours, and hours, because the 6-5 is going berserk. And you know what? Couldn't be more proud of how the MWC week went, Pat. We did 15 recordings with some of the world's most important tech companies, some customers, ecosystems, partners, hundreds of thousands of eyeballs watching what we had to say. And we want to cover it today. And by the way, don't feel sad if you miss and you're not able to attend this because you had the Friday session on your calendar, because I expected a lot of you did.
Yes.
Because we're going to do it again on Friday. This is not the last time. We're doing a catch up because there was a lot that went on last week and we didn't want to fall behind.
And if you're new to the 6-5, which first of all, we have to ask what's wrong with you. We cover 6 tech topics for 5 to 10 minutes each. Try to hit on the analysis versus the news, because we know you can look up the news, do a Google or a Bing search and get there. We also talk about some publicly traded companies, and we're going to be talking about some earnings results, but don't take that as investment advice. This is strictly for educational entertainment purposes only. So Daniel and company, we have a big show today. We are going to talk some Mobile World Congress highlights, some of the trends. We're going to be talking about a Nokia rebranding. We're going to be talking earnings for HPE, Pure Storage, Dell Tech, and HP. So wind it up. Daniel, I am calling my own number. Boom. MWC 2023 themes. Now, you can listen to this segment or maybe watch these 6 hours of that we did on videos, and you can catch all this. Actually, do that both, but I'm going to kick this one off. So how do you pull 5 days into 5 to 10 minutes? I'm going to give it my best shot. So the biggest themes that I saw, first of all, we have to give 5G credit for what it's brought right now. While I know it's not what everybody expected, and I'll get to that in a little bit later, why I think we think that, it did bring an incredible amount of spectral efficiency to the table for carriers, where they could deliver the same amount of bits at 20% of the cost. And that is a really good thing. Now, what the industry did that was different in 4G versus 5G is at the end of a 10-year 4G run, companies like Uber came out, right? So we had to build the network first, and then the developers showed up after that. It makes sense, right? Well, at 5G, the industry piled on at the beginning of the build out, and we're about 5 years into a 5G build out. So if you track this to 4G versus 5G, 5 years from now, the network will be done. And that's where you will have supposedly swing you around the room type of applications that everybody was talking about. So part of the 5G wah-wah or letdown is self-inflicted on the industry. But heck, even in the US, ARPU is up, right? The ARPU for US carriers is actually up based on 5G. So what was the talk? First off, APIs was the name of the game. And whether it's the GSM APIs, but if you think about those developers I talked about, is instead of having to, let's say you are a global ISV, and right now you have to, let's say, write to 20 APIs, right? One for Verizon, one for Deutsche Telekom, one for AT&T, one for SK in Korea. So the industry is getting smarter, and whether it's GSM type of interfaces, heck, Ericsson's Vonage. I always wonder if I'm saying that. Is it Vonage? Is it Vonage? Anyways,
I said Vonage. I've always said Vonage.
Bumped into to their CEO in the Admirals Club on the way there. Interestingly enough, but there's an agreement amongst carriers to use a common set of APIs. This would mean theoretically that regardless of what vendor you are, regardless of what carrier, and regardless of which carrier equipment vendor you are, that would absolutely blow the doors off speed of getting incredible 5G applications there. Cloud-based networks, whether it's Cloud RAN, whether it's Cloud Core, that was a huge talk. And we did a ton of interviews with executives and sat down, not on video, discussing this with executives. And by the way, on the RAN side, whether it's vRAN, whether it's ORAN, whether it's Open RAN or RAN, the current RAN, it doesn't make a difference. These can all be cloudified, but vRAN and Open RAN and ORAN can be done a lot easier. Private 5G, this was a big topic that was discussed last year. It's actually becoming a reality with vendors out there. And whether it's, a Bosch, whether it's a BMW, whether it's an energy company, people showing off their wares and talking about it. And the final one I'm going to hit, and Daniel, I definitely left you oxygen on this one, was metaverse. Check out Moor Insights and Strategy analyst Anshul Sag. He went through probably what 25 companies were doing in the metaverse. Now, you might say, wait a second, metaverse is dead, right? Well, guess what? Apple is going to come to market this year, and everybody wants to get their pound of flesh out at the show to show what they can do because, love or hate Apple, mostly hate, they do create markets and they do understand how to optimize and experience. So that's what I saw. These were some of the key themes that I thought were interesting.
Yeah, I mean, some of the big hooks, cloud networks, private 5G, they definitely were persistent year over year. I think one of the themes, if you back out even a little further, Pat, was, the macro, the way it's being described in the media versus the way companies and technology leaders are thinking about it. We've had a number of sit downs, top executives, CEOs. And I walked away from the event saying, I think the economy has challenges, but there's a lot more optimism that maybe even some of the worst of the inflation, some of the worst of the austerity that we were going to see during this period is starting to come to an end, which is also very opportunistic for tech because I've relentlessly talked about the deflationary aspects of tech. So if you're building optimizations, automations, artificial intelligence, anything else that scales well, I think in the tech space, there's going to be a lot of opportunity. I think generative AI, despite the fact that it really isn't the right location in many ways, being mobile and at the edge, it still found ground. You and I did a really interesting 6.5 with Qualcomm CEO Cristiano Amon. Talked a lot about Stable Diffusion, which is a really interesting app because some of the generative AI that we're going to want to do is going to need to happen on device at the edge with limited bandwidth and access to the network. Companies like Qualcomm and other companies that are building on-device AI capabilities are going to become very interesting there, which right now I think all the talk is really about what's happening in the cloud. The cloud providers are getting most of the credit, and there'll be more coverage of the overall kind of chat GPT space. Pat, you and I Friday, we're going to have to talk about Microsoft, Salesforce.
Exactly.
So we'll come back to that one. The other interesting theme, Pat, and this kind of kicked off every show that we had, was mobile world is back. And so shows of this size with a impact on a global scale like we had with the pandemic don't always survive, and they certainly don't always come back. This was a show, it was a wall-to-wall show up to 2019. I know walking through the halls of Hall 3, down the main row, over from where Qualcomm and Cisco down to where Samsung is. And on the other side, Pat, last year was a bit of a ghost town. And it was obviously a lot of rules, a lot of COVID-related restrictions. I don't think people wanted to travel yet. That's over. So again, another kind of like what the media is saying versus reality is. The reality is this show is back. Anyone that would kind of tell you otherwise would be, I think, disingenuous. I think that the criticality of the edge to the core network continues to gain momentum. I think the monetization in the carrier and telco ecosystem is becoming more clear. I think first it's going to be about making connectivity pervasive. I think over time, like what you talked about with things like metaverse, again, not metaverse in the sense of Meta as the social media company, but metaverse in the sense of building applications that enable people to do their job more effectively in a shipyard or in a large manufacturing facility. That's going to start to gain momentum once again. And then, of course, data transport, how we move to be able to move data from one place to another is going to be massively impactful. Everything as simple as just high quality communications and connectivity, all the way down to moving mega petazettabytes of data from cloud to edge to enable a network, to enable edge applications to be implemented and utilized, which, by the way, all creates opportunities and challenges for the mobile world and telco ecosystem, Pat. So a lot more there. You have a Forbes piece. I'm going to put out a Forbes piece. There were some, very specific things, some neat partnerships announced. Check out all our other videos. We did so many videos. We did partnership videos. We did CEO videos. We have surprise guests like Pat Gelsinger, Intel CEO, who did our first 6.5 sneak attack of our,
Yes.
and you can see me genuinely shocked when he, those push-ups, Pat, if you're listening to this, you are strong. I get it.
Great stuff there on Mobile World Congress. And I'm glad you put in there that it was definitely alive. I mean, I don't even remember seeing any masks, and nothing wrong with wearing a mask if you want to wear a mask, but I didn't even, I see them all over New York City and San Francisco. I did not see them at Mobile World Congress. So let's jump into a related content, and that was Nokia business to business rebranding that they did. Daniel, was this just another run-of-the-mill brand change, color change, or something different?
Pat, you and I had the opportunity to attend, I think it was Sunday, right before the show,
Yes.
the Nokia sort of relaunch. It was not just a brand relaunch, but kind of a brand promise relaunch. And, a lot of people out there, Pat, probably remember Nokia for the navy blue handheld devices of the early 2000s. I played that Snake game a lot. It was pretty awesome. It was calling. It actually dominated the market. You could truly say Nokia had a very strong, I don't know, dominant's always a risky word with companies that have licensing in their strategy. But in terms of just their handset business, they became a bit of a global phenomenon, certainly a phenomenon here in the US. Having said that, the BlackBerry became a very big disruptor to Nokia. And after that, it never found its footing in the US the same way. Now, this is a company that has continued to be very valuable in infrastructure, very valuable, in core RAN technologies, working with the big telcos. And so they never went away. But as we've seen, like with IBM, when you move away from selling PCs that people buy at a retail store to being much more critical at the B2B and service level layer, what can happen is brand becomes a bit muted. And then the market's awareness, understanding, and valuation of the brand becomes a little harder to sell. And so Nokia, the CEO, its top leadership, got on stage and didn't only launch a new brand, which was kind of cool, kind of abstract. If we flash it on here, you basically would say there are some incomplete letters, a little bit like Kia, the car company, did. And it became a requirement of our brain to fill in those gaps. For me, it was no problem whatsoever. I thought the company did a good job of kind of painting the picture, telling a story. And the story with the company, oh, look at you and Pekka. There you go. Pat it's not always about Pat, but is this about Pat?
Sometimes it is.
Sometimes it's about Pat. But there's Pat and Pekka. There's the new brand. As you can see, I think anyone that's known Nokia for a long time would see that picture, understand what the company is. The question is it is it valuable? Does it change? Brand exercises are always one of those things that have a combination of very tangible and very ephemeral. I think what Nokia is saying is it's turned a corner. Its global reputation and role is increasing. The value it's providing and driving to its telco partners and its ecosystem continues to increase. the company is looking to expand its valuation, grow sort of how it's seen in the market as providing the capabilities of the next generation of communications in the 5G era. And it's also really wanting to let people know that we are still early days of 5G and its intentions to not only be part of 5G and 5G plus, but into 6G are palpable. I'm not a Pat, and I'm going to be candid. I give a lot of market strategy advice, a lot of go-to-market strategy advice. I'm not a brand guy, meaning, I have some intuitive feelings about brand. I do not, we're not agency guys. And so you ran marketing corporate for a very large company at one time. But what I would say is to me, the ephemeral part was less important. What was important to me was the fact that the company is in a pivot, it's in a transformation, and it's being very articulate about the importance of its partners. And those missing pieces of its letters were described as sort of it being filled in by its ever growing and ever more important ecosystem partners. I think that message landed at MWC. Obviously, the result, a publicly traded company, in the long run, but congratulations to Pekka and then Nokia.
There are better brand people than I. I have led as a corporate vice president a new brand inside of a company before, but I'm not a brand guy. I'm primarily a strategy guy, which is why I really appreciated the company not just splashing up a new logo with a new jingle, but tying in the corporate strategy. Pekka did a great job going through the strategic called our pillars. Those were in my strategy vernacular, those would be objectives. And then our enablers, which again, in my vernacular would be called our strategy. So what does a company want to do, right? They want to grow CSP, not to be confused with cloud, but communication service providers faster than the market. So faster than an Ericsson, faster than a Samsung, and I don't even know if we count ZTE or Huawei anymore. Maybe we do. The second one, by the way, they also have to contend with the ORAN folks in the future. Second, expand the share of enterprise. And these can be enterprise services like a private 5G. I think like we saw the tie between them and Kyndryl and the great work they were doing on the next generation of connectivity. The third was actively manage the portfolio. I have to be honest, I have no idea what they meant by this. And I put that big question mark on one of my tweets Sunday. I want to figure, were they mismanaging their portfolio before? I don't know. Was this hey, we're going to do some inorganic acquisition? That was the question I did ask Pekka. I did like the answer I got from him and the team. Secure business longevity in Nokia Technologies. Essentially, this is mining the Bell Labs and all of the research with the big R. Fifth, build new business models. We saw this in things like Cloud RAN, Anywhere RAN. We saw this, or they were hinting to this in the metaverse value chain, which, by the way, kudos to the company for doing this. And then finally, as a service. So I appreciated that it wasn't just splashing the logo up there. They put it in the context of strategy. And the company does need help, particularly with enterprises, getting people off the notion that Nokia means 1990s era smartphones, which, by the way, my first smartphone was a 1990s era smartphone. So final comment I'll make is I saw this 3D hologram of the Nokia brand that was spinning around probably in 7 or 8 partner booths. And I wasn't in every booth, so I can imagine, and that is hard to do. So congrats to the Nokia marketing folks. So with that, I am going to take us out of the MWC zone and into the earnings zone, and we are going to kick off with HPE. HPE absolutely crushed it again. They had their highest revenue since 2016, highest a record for operating margin, up 80 basis points to 11.88%. They raised revenue and EPS, which was incredible. And their run rate, their ARR, an annualized version of that is $1 billion. And if you look at where the company was before Antonio Neri came on, and I really appreciated the conversation that I had with him last Friday on earnings. The company has just, it is not even the same company, right? It's a company that is less focused on volume and more focused on value. It's a company that's more focused on software. It's not that hardware doesn't matter, it does, but total solutions with a combination of their own software combined with their own differentiated hardware is where it's at. And then finally, right, you have to give the tip of the hat to GreenLake, which has a lot to the driving of that ARR number, is a huge thing. In fact, over the last 2 years, they doubled the as a service number to $10 billion through the end of this quarter. So, Daniel, the company just doesn't get the credit I think it deserves. It's funny, a company like Salesforce has a train wreck, right? And they, make this comeback, and their stock just skyrockets. And HPE, again, you can no longer say this is a fad. You can no longer say, oh, this is because they're catching up on supply chain. This is because they have the right strategy. This is because of the incredible leadership of Antonio Neri, and the company deserves more credit on the street.
Yeah, I think I was just pulling up a data point, but I mean, I think the company trades at just a incredibly low ratio at most times. I mean, on the trailing 12, it's like, it's maybe in the range of around 20. And it's actually trading higher. It's doing better right now. It lingered at $12 or $13. It's up at $15 a share. Company pays a dividend. I came out in November, and I basically put a Market Watch piece out saying, watch out for kind of what are considered to be the stodgy old tech companies, and watch them have a really big 2023. I'm here to collect credit because I think it's important from time to time when people make good calls. Let's talk about the tailwinds for HPE. The tailwinds for HPE is they made the transformation early, meaning that every one of the big OEMs right now is going through this process of saying, we want to go to subscription. Most software license companies are doing the same thing. Guess what? HPE saw that early. 2019, Antonio Neri announced the everything as a service strategy, HPE GreenLake. The company has made that move. Of course, it's been able to grow that business, to a substantial recurring revenue number, and has been able to do so. I believe its run rate's $1 billion now for the first time of recurring revenue. Yeah. And so that's a big, meaningful transformation for a company, but it still trades like a company that just sells big iron. And so that's one of the things I think that hopefully the market begins to fix, but historically has not. And by the way, I mean, Dell has had the same struggle as it's moved into multiple billions of ARR. So this is a industry-wide sort of challenge. I believe in a meeting that was open, right? Because Chuck said everything we talked about in that meeting at MWC was, I mean, the articulate Chuck Robbins from Cisco said the same thing. I think Chuck's company, CEO of Cisco, Chuck Robbins, has over 40% of recurring revenue, and the company still trades at a very diminished ARR. And that, to me, has a lot to do with the fact that analysts in the market doesn't fully get or appreciate, A, how critical these companies' technology are to operating an enterprise, and B, how successfully most of them have actually been in their transformations from all hardware or hardware plus some sort of service to a true subscription and software strategy. But Antonio's Neri, and I got a chance to talk to him on earnings night, Pat, sometime around midnight in Barcelona. And, what I really took away is I think he's finally feeling for the first time like there is a little bit of, we get it, coming from the market. And it's being validated by customers who are now looking at the GreenLake portfolio in the crawl chart of products and services for things like data services, data protection and backup, compute workloads, ML and AI, and everything else, and starting to say, we can, we aren't going to move everything to the public cloud. Now, we've got that a long time ago. We continue to get that right. And guess what? The biggest beneficiaries are going to be companies that have on-premise services that look like the public cloud. And HPE is the furthest along. And I'm comfortable saying at this juncture, HPE is the furthest along. So that has been a catalyst. And the fact that companies are being more cautious, they're slowing spend, they're being more scrutinous of moving workloads to the cloud, and that they've all settled on hybrid and multi-cloud architectures bodes well for HPE. This isn't me saying the hyperscale cloud is going to slow anytime soon. I actually believe the demand for compute services, automation, AI will only continue to drive forward more growth across the whole landscape. But this is also goes back to my comment on MWC, Pat, on why I'm optimistic. This is why I'm optimistic. The market is good for tech. The stock market, maybe not so much just yet, but people and companies are investing in tech to take advantage of deflationary value and to scale the growth of the business.
Listen, the public cloud had a decade time advantage. And it's going to take a while for the hybrid multi-cloud to build out. And I think what's going to separate companies in this future age are their ability to support the hybrid multi-cloud. And that's whether it's a hyperscaler, that's whether it's an on-prem provider. I fully expect one of these companies to get snatched up, acquired by one of these companies to go in and get that. I think they're trying to figure out right now other elements of growth. But Simple Queue service from AWS came out in 2004. Azure didn't even come out until 2010, right? So it just shows you how much of an advantage that the public cloud has. So let's move into another earnings, infrastructure. And by the way, an incredible software and as a service company, Pure Storage. So Dan, why don't you kick this one off?
Yeah, so I had a crazy week. You work all day. The one thing we didn't talk about MWC, Pat, is you work US hours, meaning it's a 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. show, but then you eat on Southern European hours. So they want dinners at 9 and 10 o'clock. And so the other thing is, of course, earnings come out usually around 4 p.m., which means in the US time for me, which means if I'm doing calls with the executives, I'm down 10, 11, 12 o'clock at midnight. So I talked to Charlie Giancarlo, CEO of Pure Storage that night. And wow, what great optimism. Charlie's always a pretty, he's charismatic in his own right. But, quarter four growth, 14%, 26% growth in 22. So while infrastructure was supposedly, down, while companies are going to spend less on technology, while, the company clearly has a moat, and that is both from the standpoint of giving customers flexibility. And of course, as the flash storage continues to become more and more competitive with traditional storage. And that's really what you're going to hear more about when we talk about FlashBlade-E. And I'll leave that one for you, Pat, because I don't want to take everything out of this one. But the growth across the business is really impressive. You had product growth, you had annual product growth. You also had subscription growth, really robust. Q4 subscription growth, 23%, and subscription services across the year, 30%, Pat. So you're seeing another thing that was really impressive was the European and international revenue. It actually grew at like 5 to 6 times faster than the US. And what does this mean? Well, there's two things to this. One is it's FX related. The dollar has weakened, which gave everybody a tailwind after those crazy periods of FX for all tech companies. But the other thing it means is that these markets where there is this higher level of austerity and this greater level of concern for recession are seeing something like Pure Storage as a way to optimize their business. That is pretty interesting. And of course, all this subscription growth and all this, is also a great indicator that the evergreen products from Pure are in high demand. So, for the market, there's another kind of macro factor. And if you look at things like the trend lines with generative AI workloads, we're going to start to see the whole storage category become really interesting, Pat. We talked about this with Micron as it relates to memory. Well, the other thing is all this data has to reside, has to be accessible, and it's not all going to be sitting in hot and warm environments. So the opportunity for storage is going to kind of have a renaissance, I think, in the coming year. And I think Pure is really well positioned to take advantage of this renaissance. And the company is seeing, ARR growth in a substantial way. They're seeing customer net adds, nearly 500 this last quarter. And the company now is, it's claiming 58% of the Fortune 500. So, my one big takeaway from Charlie was, in the last quarter, it was all about market taking. He shared that with me. It stuck with me. The company is at a size where what it has is a percentage of overall market share. Big opportunity to grow no matter what the market conditions are. This quarter, though, I think the company is becoming increasingly confident in its ability to play in that mid-market and in that more traditional solid state, storage space, that it's never price-wise been very competitive. And now all of a sudden it's going to get competitive. I can't imagine that's going to be a bad thing for Pure Storage.
Yeah, great comments. And I'm going to hit on both earnings and FlashBlade E. So first of all, I think people were a little bit disappointed in the forecast when they put it out there. But once their peers, their competitors went out, I think that they realized that it's a tough market. Now, I do think it was a conservative guide. And I do think, every time you think of generative AI and every time you think of NVIDIA driving business, there is a very high likelihood that it will be connected to a Pure system. They were one of the first, if not the first, to optimize for these types of parallelized workloads that require just an absolute tremendous amount of performance, but also sucking less power as well. So I think as you look at that too, if you look at all the unstructured data that comes along with not only generative AI, but also the environmental impact that Pure's architecture provides, I'm feeling very good about the company right now. So FlashBlade E, and listen, I have heard this every year for the last 25 years. Well, not the last 25 years. It was hard drives were going to kill optical. But I've heard, at least for a decade, I think, that flash is going to kill hard drives, right? And this very well could be. We're going to have to see the spinning disk folks and what they bring to the table. But pricing below 20 cents per gigabyte is on par with spinning disk storage. And when you factor in the environmental and the reduced power draw that goes along with this, this is a very precarious position that the spinning disk folks are encountering, but also a huge opportunity for Pure as well. And it's funny, we look at all the business and all the growth that Pure drives, but they're still only in 58% of the Fortune 500. Okay. There's another 42% they're not in, probably for various reasons. Maybe they don't need the high performance element. They're not really into, maybe they're just locked into one of Pure's competitor. But there is a long way to go, to taking share that you had mentioned. So I see Pure as a market maker, and they're doing this with FlashBlade E. And at least according to your call with Charlie, and unfortunately I couldn't make my call with him, he is going into market taking as well, taking market share. So anyways, good quarter. good opportunities for the company ahead, particularly related to generative AI and reducing that cost point on flash memory with FlashBlade E. So with that, let's move to Dell Tech earnings, and I'm going to call my own number on that. Dell had a really good quarter. I mean, listen, when I look at the optics, it was it's somewhat of a similar story to Lenovo, where if you looked at revenue being down 11%, you're like, oh my gosh, a train wreck. And what you have to do is you have to pull apart the different businesses, right? That's really the only way to look at it. So ISG, which is data center and edge, up 7% with record profitability, record storage revenue of $5 billion, up 10%. Daniel, that is hard to do Dell has the world's largest storage business, flat out. To go up that much is hard. And also, when you look at where Dell's sweet spot is, which is, I would say, high performance up to even the giant systems with Isilon, a little bit less of the low-end storage, that's really, really hard. Servers and networking were up 5%. Again, not as high as the percentages as we have seen from some other companies out there, but still it's up there. And if you look at, again, storage growth, fourth consecutive quarter of revenue growth, which I was a little concerned, maybe 3 or 4 quarters, but it seems like Dell, particularly, this is where I think they're making their play, is in the re-architected mid-range of it. So if ISG was so great, what happened overall? Well, it's all about PCs. And let me step back. Whether it's Canalys or IDC, the market's down between 30 and 40% on a unit basis. And so declined the PC business at Dell, that was down 23%. There were still some high points, just like we saw with Lenovo that kept share. You had Dell gaining 140 basis points of commercial PC unit market share. And it is crazy. It seems like every quarter we're talking about share gains that Dell's having across commercial. I attribute that to a good strategy. I also attribute that to making the right trade-offs as it relates to its product, but also a sales motion in the small business that they've run effectively, where they can be a solution provider all the way from PCs to small business servers. So overall, top line numbers not great. You had to peel back the onion on the quarter to get to the high points. I don't see any of the challenges here as being self-inflicted at all. It was all about the market. Final thing I want to say is I want to give a tip of the hat to retiring CFO Tom Sweet. I spent a lot of time with Tom Sweet over the past decade. I think he came in right around the EMC time frame. And what I appreciated, I think most about him, if I ever said something he didn't agree with, he would say it. And it wasn't even, sugar coated. I love that economy of speech. I love just getting right to the point. And Tom did some great stuff. I mean, heck, we're going to go private. We're going to buy a company. We're going to go public again. We're going to, get our debt from junk status to AAA. He was a big architect behind that.
Yeah, you covered a lot of ground. And I want to also say I had regular quarterly meetings with Tom and appreciated the work he did very much, and looking very much to working with the incoming CFO as well. Always enjoyed my conversations with her very much. The overall performance of the business we knew was going to be bifurcated. We knew PCs were down. We knew infrastructure should be robust. And we got really what we expected. You look at the overall market condition, Dell's PC business, really held up against the backdrop of the overall market. I think it was down, was it 11%? I'm trying to pull the right number. No, sorry, 23%, right? And then, what was the overall 2016? So
well, the overall revenue was down 11%.
No, I mean the market down for PCs this quarter, wasn't it around 16? That's one number.
28%. I believe Canalys had a higher number. So.
Okay, so I'm all over the place. So let me start that over again. PC market down 28, CSG down 23. So it means the company performed better than the actual overall market condition. Pat, I am exhausted of talking on the PC market. Look, that market did extraordinarily well for a period of time, and anybody that sees it as anything other than pull forward of purchasing is misunderstanding. We are going to have some innovation, some disruption, whether that's on-device AI, whether that's new formats and form factors and screens, whether that's lighter, whether that's connectivity, whether that is going to be, all-day battery life. There will be things that will drive the next wave of significant purchasing, and the PC is much more resilient than anybody ever wants to give it credit for. I don't care how big our phones get. People want to work on PCs. Dell, this is a goalie. And so this is a goalie for every company in the space. As long as Dell is outperforming the overall market size and shape, I think they're doing a good job executing. The company always really does do a good job executing. I'm glad that the company is diversified with ISG. I'm glad the company has its play. I'm continue to push the recurring revenue. It's going to be interesting under new leadership in the CFO if they're going to get more aggressive on talking recurring revenue, and specifically Apex. You heard us talk about HPE and GreenLake. Dell's business is so much larger, though. I think there's a concern as a percentage of the overall revenue if they start saying like, hey, we're at $1 billion in recurring. People are like, that's 1%. That's not very much. But it is important to say, hey, we're getting traction with hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, data services, protection, backup, security, devices as a service. So how they're going to be able to kind of continue to explain that is going to be something I'm going to be looking at very closely. But Pat, kudos. I mean, record infrastructure revenue up 12%. Strength in servers, strength in networking, strength in storage. And they're gaining, by the way, Pat, they're also gaining commercial PC market unit share. So even despite the down, they are doing well in certain spaces. So, where do they sit? Look, Dell, Pat, they've had the same slide for a long time, the storage leadership and then the server PC. They literally have 2 slides in their deck that talk about all the spots that the company is number one. I would read them all off, but honestly, we don't have time. We're going to run out of time on the show. So the point is the company's well positioned. The company is diversified. The company has had consistent leadership. The company is struggling with short-term revenue growth because the PC market is in a difficult spot. But having said that, the pivot to software, the pivot to security, the pivot to infrastructure as a service, multi-cloud are all in their wheelhouse. So I'm pretty confident long-term the company's valuation will hang in there. And by the way, they never value, much like HPE, very high. So as that recurring revenue valuation as the PE, never very high. So I think as the company continues to be able to roll out more of the subscription services like HPE, they should be beneficiaries. And when the PC comes back, they will be certain beneficiaries.
So let's move from Dell Technologies into HP Earnings. Dan, a little bit more of the same?
Oh, I guess you could go across the boards, Pat. I also did talk to Enrique Lores. So I had a busy week. I stayed up late a lot, had a lot of good conversations. It was a tougher quarter. I mean, I think the company's first quarter net revenue was down 18.8%. Let's just start by saying much greater exposure than Dell to the PC market. It is their biggest business, and it was impacted in a pretty significant way. They did reaffirm guidance. They did, show some areas of strength, and that's going to be in some of the innovation areas and in some of the remote and hybrid work areas, which is where I was really encouraged. So, as many of you know, the company bought Poly last year. We know we're going in this kind of period of return to work versus working in office. You and I had worked with Dave Shull very closely, CEO of Poly. Now he leads part of that business unit for HP, Pat. But this is an area where I think it could be very interesting for the company, because while personal systems revenue was down 24%, commercial personal systems revenue was down 18%. Print was down 5%. The area around innovation and growth was the one area that the company is seeing some strength and growth. Remote work, hybrid work. That's going to be a really interesting opportunity for the company to implement and get some strength moving forward. Pat, you and I, HP had some more challenges than others did when it came to supply chain throughout the process. It didn't grow as much as some of the others. But having said that, it's been steady. And so they're going to have to weather 2 or 3 really difficult quarters, Pat. And so I think some of their premium products, I've been using their new Dragonfly. I think some of these products are really great, but we are going to see an incredibly competitive market. The ability to implement technologies and then expand this peripheral business, to me, are going to be 2 of the most important opportunities for it to scale and to grow. Pat, it wasn't any surprises here. I did not expect it to be good. Didn't end up being good. They're going to need to see the market turn. I don't know what their magic bullet is, because I don't know if the hybrid work is big enough to turn the ship, but I do think it's an area that the company needs to lean into to sell the market that there is growth ahead.
It's interesting with HP. I sit in some meetings with other industry analysts, and they talk about the death of HP in the PC industry. And I got to tell you, I'm here to say that the death of HP in the PC industry has been greatly exaggerated. Heck, even Lenovo pointed out in their earnings release that HP made a big rebound. I mean, this company is the number 2 highest market share company out there on the planet. And I think some smart people that I respect, are confusing HP's overall strategy, which is diversification with hybrid systems, with gamings, with workforce solutions as a service, and even forgetting that the company, makes $800 million in profit dollars in printing in a single quarter. Sorry, $870 million in operating profit dollars in the current quarter. I mean, that is absolutely unheard of. So I look at a solutions-based focus and strategy, and I like the strategy. Is it going to be hard to get there? No. And you know what? They had a hard time with supply chain. I mean, I think you and I, when we listened to the calls, it was put on the slides probably 6 straight quarters. It was an issue. I've talked to channel partners, and it was an issue. And the company did stumble. But let's not confuse that with the company deciding to get out of PCs or something like that. I think that's lazy, and I think that's just dumb. Both you and I are going to be attending one of their big events up in Chicago. We're going to have the chance to talk to the leaders of the company. It's been a while since I've had the ability to do that, with the exception of the quarterly calls that we do with the CEO and the CFO. But I'm interested in catching up. And I guess I talk to Alex, once every other month. But it's been great to catch up with the print folks, the Poly folks, and the peripheral folks as well. So, Dan, we did it. In 49 minutes, we did this a midweek 6-5, and I just want to thank you and the audience for bringing it home. But you know what? If you missed us, don't worry. Tune in on Friday morning at 9 a.m. Central Time, where we are going to have a rip-roaring. Did I just say rip-roaring? Did I sound like an old guy?
It's going to be rip-roaring, dude.
I did. We're going to talk about Luminar Day. We're going to talk about Plus and Nokia alignment. We're going to talk about, Nikola alignment. We're going to talk Dynamics 365 going all GPT and Salesforce going GPT. We're probably going to talk about Marvell earnings and maybe even talk about some Windows 11 updates. But Daniel, thanks for your time, buddy. I love that new office. I do.
Good, looking good. See you all later. Thanks y'all for tuning in.
Thanks, everybody. Hit that subscribe button if you like what you heard. And if you have negative feedback, we don't want to hear it. If you have positive feedback, tell us on social
media.
I'm kidding, of course. Anyways, tune in. We love you. Take care. Bye-bye.